So this, sometimes I have trouble with words, but this is one of those times because there's so much that I can say, but I'll try to be brief and succinct in just saying that my guest today is somebody I have been a fan of and really studying his playing for since the fall of 1986, actually before that, but I'll explain that in a little while. And when I say this, Chad, I don't want you to feel uncomfortable in any way, shape, or form, but we all have a lot of influences as musicians, as people, as humans. But when it comes to drums and my drumming, the number one single most influential player is you. And I really appreciate everything. No, not at all. No. I mean, there are a lot of people, and I'll explain more about it after I tell my story about how my life changed the night I saw you with Allan Holdsworth the first time. And so without further ado, I just want to welcome somebody. This is a real high honor for me. Educator, musician, composer, recording artist, amazing, phenomenal drummer, Chad Wackerman. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Carl. Thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you for all those kind words. That's amazing.
Well, you know, it's an interesting world, the music world. So many voices out there. And one of the things that I find is talking with, various people about this recently. It seems to me that in this time right now, and I don't mean COVID, I just mean that in 2021, and I could be wrong, but I think it's more difficult to establish your own identity or your own voice musically because there's so many people out there who have influenced us. And it's not that it's a problem. In fact, I'm grateful for all the influences, but what I really love and admire so much is, when you hear like Elvin, you hear Tony, and you only need first names a lot of times, right? And you hear whoever.
You only need a couple measures listening
exactly.
to, and you can, and it's like it's like they're signing their name.
Exactly, and it's a signature, and it's a very distinct voice. You're one of those people. Give me a couple measures. Oh, that's Chad. I can just tell. I can almost always tell, especially depending upon the situation. But, oh, that's Chad. But I love that. So you've established an identity from right out of the gates, it seems. I mean, because, well, obviously you're uniquely Chad and you're uniquely yourself. And at some point today, I'd love to get into a little bit about your approach to playing and composing and soloing and phrasing and all that stuff. But as I said off camera too, a little diversion here. Congrats to Sophia. She's awesome.
Thank you. That's my daughter. She's a singer-songwriter, and she's doing some great stuff. So yeah, I think you saw her on American Idol last season.
I sure did. I watched that show.
Yeah, I'm incredibly proud of her. She's writing great, really, really wonderful music at the moment, and putting out her own stuff, and she's got a lot of new stuff coming out. So yeah, it's really fun.
I have a question. Does she sing on the new Steve Hunt CD? Does she?
She does. Yeah,
I thought so. It's not out
she
yet.
Sings on one of the tracks.
Yeah, because I was talking with Steve a couple of weeks ago. We talked for a long time, and I love him. What a great person, great human, great musician and composer.
He is. He's wonderful.
Such a classy guy. Just a real gentleman. And he mentioned that. He sent me the files because we were doing a conversation, and I listened. Mm-hmm. And she's on it. You're on it. There's some great stuff on that CD, man. Holy cow!
There is. He has some. Boy, it's a huge list of wonderful musicians on there.
Yeah. So that I don't know if it's going to come out this way on the downloads or the whatever, but the second song in the file order he gave me was one that has the name Cherokee in it, something Cherokee. Mm-hmm. And Jimmy Haslip,
that's probably the one she sings on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jimmy Haslip plays on that. And actually, I think I'll just go right. I just have a bunch of notes here. We don't have to go in order for me. But I knew it was you. I didn't read it. I didn't have to read the notes to know it was you. So, oh my gosh, there he goes again. He's doing this great, beautiful stuff. The way you play on that tune, Steve was describing that when he sent the files out to you, he didn't know what he'd get back from anybody, actually, and he was expecting
Sure.
maybe one type of thing from Jimmy and maybe another thing, one idea from one person, another person. And then he said, Jimmy sent his stuff back, Chad sent his stuff back, and it's like the phrasings, which leads me to a question I have. It's one of the things I've tried to study, and I can't help myself but to think of you and when I'm playing in various musical situations. Not that I want to or even could be you. It's not. This is meant as a compliment, but the influences there. How do you approach when you get a file from somebody and you're recording? Do you have a particular way of going about it, or you just go with what you feel? How does it work for you?
Well, the interesting thing about it, when you get a file, and sometimes you'll get files and it might just be MIDI instruments. I mean, it might just be, they want to put the drums on first and they're going to replace everything. Steve's wasn't like that. Steve had great keyboard solos that usually I'm sure he's going to keep those. They were really wonderful. But sometimes I think there was one solo that wasn't in there. It was going to be another instrument. So you just have this open space and you have to kind of put an imaginary solo in your mind. So it's a bit of a puzzle. But the thing that I've noticed, even if you have a static track, like even if it's a MIDI track, there's no dynamics. What you do drum-wise will give the impression that the band's playing softer or louder or more intense or more energy or less energy, a different mood by what you play. The drums really shapes the whole thing more than any other instrument. And you can prove it just by taking a very static track and, you could record it 10 different ways, 10 different approaches, and it's going to sound like 10 different songs. So it's nice when you get something with, because Steve and I spent years with Allan Holdsworth together, touring and, riding in the van across Europe and States. And,
Excuse me.
We're really old friends. And he is an amazing musician, great composer. And he has enough trust to just send you the track with no direction. And that's what Allan Holdsworth used to do too. He'd never tell us anything. He'd be like, well, here's the guitar part. Here's what I'm going to play. And so, okay.
He wanted you to be you.
He always wanted everybody to feel like he wanted to feel when he was in other bands. Allan used to say that he was in certain bands where they would tell him exactly what to do and he hated it. And then he said when he was with Tony Williams, there was no direction. It was just,
oh, wow.
And I remember him saying at one point, he said, well, asking Tony, what am I going to do on this? And Tony was like, you're going to think of something. But Allan approached it that way. And so it's kind of a continuous thing, I guess, with Steve. And we've known each other for so long and we have so much trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When obviously if you send a track to Jimmy Johnson or Jimmy Haslip or the other great drummers on his record, Gary Husband and Billy Cobham, and there's ridiculous players on that record of Steve's. They're going to come up with something great. So it's anyway. I could hear the tune, and there was enough there where I could kind of mess with it, but I kind of have to decide what the general mood was obvious, but then and there's I played on two tunes. One was a kind of almost like a kind of aggressive swing in 5. And the other one was a bit almost like a quasi weather report. And it was a little bit funky, had a lot of percussion on it, had tabla and stuff.
Yeah.
So that one I'm a little bit more locked into a beat on that. but the one in 5 was more, much more open. It was quite long. It was a really long
Yeah,
piece
it's a
too.
good,
So
I think it might be like 12 minutes, starts in 5 for a while, and then I think it goes to 4 and then back to
okay,
5
that's
or
the one.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the one with the word Cherokee in it, a prayer or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just, and again, if you give it to 5 different drummers, you're going to get 5 different songs out of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's okay. That's fine as long as Steve's happy. It's his music. But yeah, it's a bit of a puzzle, and I try to figure out, like with the solos, I don't want to record too many times playing the drums because I want it to sound fresh.
Yeah.
You once you start to learn somebody's solo, some people have attempted to hit too many of their accents and phrases.
Sure.
So I try to like not memorize the solo and pretend it's the first time I've heard it, and try to react.
That makes total sense. It would seem like over the years, you've known Steve for decades. You know Allan for decades. That there's also
30 years with Allan,
that thing that develops over time of the chemistry, which I mean that can hit in a matter of a few bars, right? Sometimes it's just super special right away, and then the evolution of that going forward, and then I can see where you could maybe anticipate their intention behind something, but they still want you to be you when they give you a file or a chart or no chart in Allan's case.
Yeah.
Right. That's pretty cool.
No, it's super fun. It's fun. I mean, I still always prefer playing live with the band. That's because as you say, the chemistry is right, and there's musicians at a high level. You get a group of them that use their ears and are, because we're basically talking mostly about a jazz idiom, even though it's electric.
Right.
Steve's music, there's I hear some of Allan's influence in there too, and conceptually,
me too.
It's more open than he's not saying just play the beat. It's not a dance tune. It's not a, I'm very schooled as a drummer. I had a big music education. My father's a music teacher, and I studied for years all the different styles and different grooves and how to back up a singer and all these different things. But when you've mostly probably heard me with Allan Holdsworth, with Frank Zappa, where the music is much more open.
I've also seen
allowing,
you in a
allowing
Barbra
of
Streisand.
yourself.
Yeah, I saw you in a Barbra Streisand situation too, not live but online somewhere. Yeah, I think my father was also a musician, really talented, just super talented, more talent than I could ever hope to have. But he played a lot of instruments and composed and arranged and all that. But he always told me you need to practice all these things. You got to get out the show tunes. You've got to learn how to do this stuff and that stuff. And you know what? If he hadn't done that, I wouldn't have made a living out of it for 35 years.
Yeah, and
I had to play everything. Yeah.
I found too that once it's surprisingly enough, all those years ago when I did that Barbra Streisand gig, and it was a live recording and ended up being a very successful. All of her records are successful, but an album. Her previous album was songs from West Side Story, so there were lots of odd times.
Yeah. Right.
If you walked into a Barbra Streisand gig, you wouldn't think he'd be, playing on odd time signatures, but there it was, and it was like,
that's
fine. Yeah. This is easy. But I guess the point is, when you get to play with musicians at a very high level, kind of, for me, the style almost disappears. I can play things that I play with Allan Holdsworth. I mean, not as dense for sure, but one of the other gigs that I've gotten to do quite a lot in a subbing situation is with James Taylor.
Yeah.
So that's being, there's a certain way to play that gig too. But I can play, phrases that are not all cliches.
Sure.
And it works. It's just in that situation, you try to figure out, like for a drum fill, it's usually a transition, a song to the next part of the song, either going up or down dynamically or density wise. And there's a million ways to do that. You don't always have to play the obvious, you know.
Yeah, that's actually really good advice right there. You don't always have to.
I do
play
that with
the
students
obvious.
too. Students,
Yeah.
I teach a fair amount. I teach at the local college here in Long Beach, Cal State Long Beach. The jazz department studies drummers, which I think there are 4 of at the moment. But a lot of these guys, they get in ruts. They find they play the same beats, same fills all the time. And then it's like, well, let's figure out why this is working so well. And then I show them, once you figure out why this drum fill is working, you know, well, it's exciting towards the end of it. It starts sparse, or you know, it's just a 2-beat thing. Then they can come up with 12 different ones to serve the same purpose. You know.
Right. Yeah. That's great. You know, if you don't mind, just because we're sort of on this topic of phrasing and playing and approach, and also talking a little bit about Allan, I just have a little story to share. Won't take long. So it's the fall of 1986, and Frank Malfitano, who's a dear friend, lives right up the road from me, always runs the jazz series of the Jazz Fest here. Very successful, and it's brought in some great people. So it's the fall of 86, maybe October, November, I'm not sure. Dave Weckl was going to be there with Chick Corea, the Electric Band, and Frank Garibaldi and them. Yep. So, and please, when I say this, I hope you understand the end result of this is the ultimate compliment. It's a heartfelt compliment from me to you. It's how my life changed. So on the roster was an opening act for Chick Corea, and I'd never heard of this guy. It was Allan Holdsworth. Allan Holdsworth. Now, I somehow found out, I think Frank told me that you were on the band. I'm like, good, because I know Chad's really great, because I've been listening to him with Zappa. I hadn't seen you yet live, right? So, like, okay, well, it's got to be a decent band, or Chad wouldn't be with them, right? So a whole bunch of us, guitar players and drummers, we're sitting in the balcony, like right near the front. We have beautiful seats. And I really, you know, again, I wanted to see Dave because he was kind of newer on the scene, and you know, I just check him out.
Yeah,
so
influence. Yeah.
So I get there and I'm waiting, and I'm just in my head, I'm thinking, just hope the opening act is really good, because if they're not, we got to get through it fast so we can see Chick and Dave. So you guys come out. It's you, Allan, Jimmy Johnson, and you hit. And that 70-minute set, that was it. See, I had never heard Allan. I never even heard his name. I don't know how that happened. I don't know how I feel like, because I thought I knew all the heavy players, and I had no idea. And you had, I think you had some electronics that night. You had some ice bells. I mean, and I watched you, the fluidity, that whole, I have a bootleg of that too. I don't know where it is, but anyways.
Fine. Yeah, no problem.
But because I went back, I would listen over and over and over again. And at the intermission, I said to my friends, like, I got to go home. And they're like, what? You got to stay. I said, no, I can't let these sounds leave my head. I was very ready to leave. And they said, well, that's why they make CDs. Just go buy CDs. So I did. The next day I got IOU, Tavakron, and Metal Fatigue. And that was it. And that was the most pivotal moment of my musical life, because everything changed. Allan changed me. You changed me. I've seen you many times. I saw you once with Frank Zappa here in Syracuse at the Landmark Theater in '88, because I know they were registering voters. It was just before the election that year.
That's the only time we took intermission, was on that tour to register voters for the Women's League of Voters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we always played right straight through, but it was election year. So.
Yeah, I'd seen him once before. I don't know who the drummer was, but it was after Vinnie was with him and before you were with him. There must have been, I don't know who it was, but...
Yeah, Dave Logaman, I think, probably.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So anyways, I just want to thank you for that, because seriously, that changed everything for me, you know? And then I started studying. It's like, I got to figure out this Wackerman guy, because like he's doing stuff nobody else is doing. I love it.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I mean, Jimmy Johnson and I, like, we talked to him the other day, and because some other things have been coming out, and of live shows that we did, and Jimmy was saying, yeah, well, we were up there like working, trying our best, and then of course Allan's like rewriting the history of guitar like on stage, so which is really true. I mean, his it was just so amazing to work with him. His whole idea of music was so different, just not unlike, as I mean, it hit you that way, but it also hit the band members that way. We felt very honored and very kind of protective of his music as well. It was so unique and so special, and it had such a everything harmonically so advanced, and just beautiful, absolutely gorgeous songs. A lot of the guitar players I fear didn't get that part of it because they were so amazed of his kind of speed and fluidity, and but the tunes themselves they're like nothing else. I mean, it took me a minute to kind of get the concept of that, because when I first started playing with him, he played these gorgeous, this sounded orchestral, beautiful chords, but he did want a lot of energy behind it. Like, my tendency was like, well, this is beautiful, I should like play more space and play just bring out the prettiness of and he was like, no, you can, then I kind of dug it a little bit more into the Tony Williams lifetime and thought, oh, this is really where I'm feeling like it's generally coming from rhythmically, and that was kind of the same way. Really gorgeous chords, but of course, Tony being Tony, just bowl you over with wonderful.
Oh man, Gary Husband told me
stuff.
that.
So
yeah.
Please go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, Gary was saying one thing about Allan is it was impossible to play too much drums because he loved drums. So how did you meet Allan? How did the gig come about?
Through my friend John Ferraro, great drummer. John had auditioned with him, and John knew he was doing a tour of somebody else anyway that he couldn't do it, but he wanted to just go and audition. And John heard about it because the Ernie Ball family, John was close to them, and I think David was a cyclist, and Allan was a cyclist, and
right.
just like that. He was just having open auditions because Gary's in the IOU band, and Allan moved to California. Gary stayed out there for a while, but decided to move back to England, so he needed a drummer. So it was Paul Williams and Jeff Berlin joined the band at that time, and I did.
Right. I forgot about
Jeff. And the audition was an hour and a half of improvisation. That was the audition. It was, again, no tunes, no music, and in fact, during the audition, he came up with that rhythmic line to one of his more famous tunes called "Road Games."
Yeah,
because he recorded, this cassette player recorded the audition, and that was one of the things we fell into, and that became a tune later on.
Oh,
yeah, it was just like that. And I had already been working with Frank, which was not a full-time job. It was tour to tour. So I did have these holes, and when I wasn't working with Frank, I'd work with Allan. And eventually that kind of worked out well with Gary too, because he joined a band called Level 42.
Right.
And so he would do those tours, and we kind of bounced off. We both did Allan's gig for quite a few years.
Yeah.
Actually, it's funny. I was just listening to a live. Oh, hey, puppy. I love dogs. I was just listening to a Level 42 live thing the other day. Actually, Allan plays on that, and his name on the records is Alan Murphy. That's the credit they gave him. I think there was some kind of.
Oh no, that was a guitar player. That was a guitar. Is earlier a guitar player?
Oh really?
There was a guitar player named Alan Murphy. Yeah. I think Allan Holdsworth. I believe he passed away. Then Allan Holdsworth kind of jumped in for a few months to help him out.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. So there was an Alan Murphy. I didn't know that. Very
Yeah,
interesting.
sorry about that.
So you came in then,
Hey.
I think maybe the first recording I have that I know of that you're on with Allan is Road Games. Is that?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that.
Road Games is.
So I'm just curious about that experience. And I want to talk about a few things too with Frank Zappa and some other things. But by the way, I just want to say a gentleman who I know, Michael Mallow, says that he picked up your Murray Spivack drum lessons. He wants to say thank you. He's watching now. Helped him
Thank you.
It helped him greatly to play more relaxed, which helped with his flow and speed. So
fantastic. Yeah. I was really lucky to at a very young age. When I was 13 years old, I studied with Murray Spivack.
Mm-hmm.
It was this is a little diversion of what we're talking about, but and we can get into that, I guess a bit later. Murray Spivack was Louis Belson's teacher. And,
really? Oh, wow.
Yeah. Anyway.
I met
but I'm
Louis
sorry, you wanted to know about Allan?
Oh, you know what I was? Yeah. So if we stay on track, because I do have pretty bad ADHD, although I'm managing it fairly well these days. What I'm just curious about is, I think that like what you've written, and songs you've written on your that have been on various recordings, plus your own recordings, is you're welcome, Michael. So there's a lot of emotion for me when I listen to the new Steve Hunt thing and I hear Steve's playing. I can, not to sound corny or anything, but my eyes can well up and that's happened a lot with your music that you've put out on your own, and Allan too. I mean, I've been at concerts where I'm like, I could be crying, but it's all happy. It's like so good to hear this. What was it like for you, the overall experience? And I guess if I was to ask one question, how did it impact you working with Allan? If there's even a way to answer that.
Yeah, well, that's a big question. I think huge. Right away I understood that. I think at first when you work with a leader, with anybody, you want to figure out what they need. Mm-hmm. But with Allan, it was like, because he was so open and so kind of giving, allowing yourself to really do whatever you wanted to do. It was trying to figure out the placement and the concept of the band, the sound of the band, the energy it needed and what it didn't need. And I realized right away, it didn't need any cliches. Mm-hmm. So, and I noticed Allan didn't play any cliches. He didn't play any blues licks. He didn't strum the guitar.
Right.
It's very severe. He never went jing. Mm-hmm. Ever. It was always, playing like a keyboard. So I thought, well, obviously drum. And I wasn't really at that point. I was trying to kind of erase cliches out of my own playing too. So this was, something I was really interesting. And even to the point of like, if, some of the tunes have a fill at the beginning of a tune, I kind of purposely never started on one. I always played a fill, so you didn't know what it was, and then you'd hear the song. I thought, I don't want it to be so obvious, like, so I just, just would start later. But that thing of kind of and it ties into, I think it ties into the thing you were talking about, having a personality and a signature. I saw it in Allan because there were so many things he edited out of a typical guitar player's type of playing. And because he edited out these things, it made him even more unique and I think have a stronger voice. And it was everything. It was his sound. It was the way he wrote music, obviously, the way he soloed, the way he would keep you guessing, the intensity level, and that ongoing quest to get better. So playing in the band was, and again, I was never ever to the level that he was at, but I wanted to be able to support what he was doing and have that kind of just make the music as strong as it could be, basically within that world that he had created.
I
his
probably
music.
disagree with you on that, on the part about being at his level, because, and I say this with love, Alan, because we all loved
No,
you so
I
much.
mean, he really changed. I'm just now, I think some players are trying to grab onto some of the stuff he did. And of course it's not the same, but
No,
it was just so different. It wasn't, guitar players couldn't recognize what he did.
but he
So,
really loved how
big.
we're working with you. I know this from him actually, and talking with him and other people. I think I mean this. Anything I say, I mean in a positive way. It seemed like he was pretty hard on himself. I know Jimmy Haslip was telling me.
Yeah.
One of the first things that would happen is, Steve Hunt was telling me this too. He says it was like a bunch of apologies between gigs. I'm sorry, I'm
Mhm.
sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't play so well, and he
Even
just
on the
was
microphone.
Oh, really? No kidding.
Oh yeah, we'd finish a tune. He said, "I'm sorry you had to hear that."
I
And
laugh.
of course, it'd be something where,
I mean, in a way, it's sad, but in a way, it's the quest to always reach for the uncommon chord. I've got the book right up there. So interesting. So just one more thing, Steve, and then I'd like to just move on a little bit. And of course, you can stop me at any time if there's anything you want to add at all. This is just a conversation. Steve mentioned something to me a couple weeks ago. He articulated I have to paraphrase, but he was saying how when Chad plays, especially, stylistically, when you're in a Holdsworth situation, or, Steve's, the Cherokee song, especially, less of a locked in groove. He says Chad has a way of almost like orchestrating, not that it's planned out, yet maybe thinking of a bigger picture. Instead of thinking 4-bar phrase, maybe it's 16 or 32 or however many, depending upon the tune. But do you feel that, does that make sense to you?
yeah, and I think the other thing about phrasing is like eventually, and I learned this through working with Zappa and Holdsworth too. They're just sentences. Phrases are just sentences, right? And at one point, it really is. It doesn't have to start on a beat. And there was something Frank Zappa told me years ago. We were in some airplane, and I was sitting next to him traveling, and I was asking about his whole audition process and how much it and but a huge amount of stuff you really would need to know, to do you kind of need to be an orchestral percussionist and a jazz drummer, rock drummer, Latin drummer, and be an expert at on time signatures and polyrhythms and all this stuff. And we got onto, I asked him about polyrhythms, and he said, well, and on time signatures, he said, well, it's really unnatural to play in 4/4. I'd never heard anybody say that before. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, you don't talk in 4/4. And then just, it's like the bell went off. It's really true. And it doesn't have to be boxed in, like to 1-bar phrase, to 2-bar phrase, a 4-bar phrase. It can be shorter or longer. And if it flows, it can work really well. You have to know in Western music, where the phrases start and end.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's more open, you have to keep track of the bigger picture for sure. But no, you can, it's very much like talking, and playing can be like talking. Like sometimes students try to mimic a conversation. You know what I mean? It does come up with different types of phrasing, playing free or playing in a solo, and have like one drum be one person and another drum be another person, and come up with statements between the two, and then say, okay, now pretend they're getting into an argument. What do people do in an argument? Well, they tend to repeat themselves, and thank you, thanks. They'll make their point maybe louder, maybe slower, maybe with more aggressiveness, or so you can mimic all these kind of things people do in conversation on the drums.
Right.
pretty easily.
Right.
You know,
Interesting.
so think of a rhythm as one word, as a word or a sentence, and then
Mhm.
you can have a snare drum. The floor tom can repeat it or come up with a new sentence, and they go back and forth. You know, it's just, I have all these little games I do with students, but it does make you think of. It kind of gets you into a new way of phrasing rather than thinking of the typical 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a, going in one direction, all that. Then the whole thing about on drums, you can orchestrate, and Terry Bozzio, my buddy Terry, does this so well.
Yeah.
But,
He does.
really listen to every sound you have available on the kit at every dynamic and every point of the head,
Mhm.
all the different tones you have access to. Like the New Orleans drummers use a lot of a snare drum head,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Rock drummers tend to use the center. They're all different tonal qualities, but you can play it and get all these different sounds out of one drum, things like that.
Right.
Then orchestration, you can go through all your sounds, divide them up into short sounds, long sounds, or bright sounds and dark sounds,
Mhm.
and then come up with combinations that you might like the sound of. And they can be kind of close sounds, like your first tom, your third tom, use that as unison rhythms, and your second tom, a fourth tom. You can use a bell cymbal and a bass drum, which I used to do quite a lot, which was the extreme frequencies, the really high and the really low, speak really well together.
I love that. Yeah. You had the first time I saw you, especially, you had a few ice bells, I think 3, 4, maybe.
Yeah, they're Paiste cup chimes, they're called. They make a set of 7 of them.
And I love the contrast between, the low drums and the high pitched, the bell.
Yeah, so you're thinking a bit more like an orchestrator when you think in those ways, rather than always, again, it's trying to get away from cliches, and those are very simple. They're all very simple things. But if you really think about sound a little bit more and all the available sounds you have with you, even on a 4-piece kit, you have a huge palette, palette of colors there. Then it's up to you how to use them.
I wasn't going to ask you this, but it just prompted a thought, and that is, have you ever tuned your drums to particular pitches?
Yes. When I worked with Terry Bozzio, we used to tour together, and he had every tom tuned to, at that point, he had a set of chromatic piccolo toms, and then everything else is diatonic. So basically the white notes on the piano, and the chromatic was obviously the white and black notes. And at first I was trying to tune to a different scale, but I just found when we were playing together, it worked better when, he'd have a pedal tone A for a while, and I could play it. It just seemed to be more in sync sonically.
Oh.
Of course, the longer you play, and lights affect the tuning, and if you hit hard, you get more pitch bend and all that stuff.
Right.
If you play light, you'll get more of the fundamental. I don't do it so much anymore. When I was Zappa, I had one drum tech who noted that I had tended to tune at a 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 toms, and I think I tuned to really wide intervals, like A, E, A, E, A, something like that.
Okay.
There were really big intervals, but I found that I got more clarity on the recordings that way too.
Oh, I see.
Rather than it's it's just the way I did it.
I'd like to talk about your experience with Frank Zappa in a minute, but I'm just curious right now, because I want to make sure, first of all, I don't want to keep you longer than you have. I have plenty of time today, but you have a student at some point. So
yes,
I really want to make sure we get to what you're doing.
Okay.
What you have going on, if there's any something you're working on, books, CDs, recording projects, if you can tell us what that is, and then where people can buy it.
There's been a big, I have a new website, and through that there's I've been working hard on a new educational website, Chad Wackerman's Drum Room. But if you just go to chadwackerman.com, it'll take you right there.
Yeah, there's a link to it there. I went in there. It's really cool.
And on there is it's kind of powered by Drum Channel. You could say it that way. Some years ago, I did a whole master class on Murray Spivack's teaching, which one of your viewers had mentioned.
Yeah,
And
Michael. Yes.
Murray was an unbelievable teacher for hands, snare drum, orchestral snare drum technique, and we did a lot of reading. But he had a way of playing. If you went through his system, which I did, there's a lot of great drummers who took from him. Vinnie Colaiuta, all my brothers, Brooks, John, my dad, Joey Heredia, Carlos Vega, Louis Belson, of course. I think Joe Morello took lessons from him. He had an amazing, quite amazing life, and he was a great drum teacher. And he had a separate career in the film industry as well. But he really did teach the mechanics of drumming. And if you went through a system, you could play without any tension and have a huge amount of endurance. He divided up the rudiments into common arm motion. Like it's a really totally different system. And he was very, very old school. Anyway, so one thing I've done for Drum Channel, which is now on my Chad Wackerman Drum Room site, is the whole Murray Spivack Masterclass, which is, I think it's 30 episodes. And then I also did a masterclass on reading drum charts. And it comes from the jazz big band perspective. And starts very, very simple, kind of at a level of what you would expect a junior high school kid who had maybe been in a concert band. So if you can read quarter notes, eighth notes, triplets, and 16th notes in its most basic form, you can go through this course. I think it's 25 episodes. And I'll show you how to be able to sight read drum charts.
Great.
And be able to, there's all sorts of hints in there about what to play, what you can avoid, how to sight read it, how to like read it down once and make it sound great, even if you don't hit all the figures. You know, but it tells you what you should hit, what you shouldn't hit, how to set up things, all that. And then at the end of it, I just play alongs and, you know, I'll mock up charts. And at the end of it, I play with my dad's junior high school big band.
Oh, cool.
I play three tunes, 3 different ways, like just very basic first way, then kind of college level the next way, then as if it was a recording session the third way. So you can hear the variants and approaches.
So really can go to your chadwackerman.com. The site looks great, by the way. It's a really, really nice site, easy to use, and they can go to the drum room.
And there's a lot more coming out.
Good,
I've got a whole list of other categories I've been working on. One is modular drumming, which is basically taking like one sticking or a sticking in a foot and showing you how many ways you can use that sticking. So it's and all the different styles you can use it and how you can orchestrate it. Play the same thing. If you move one hand over, it sounds totally different. Can be a beat, can be a fill, all that kind of stuff. Add an accent. You know, paradiddle can be a swing rhythm. It's just there's so much stuff that we do over and over and over. If you take even a few of these, you can expand your drumming vocabulary pretty easily.
And that's something I was talking with another gentleman the other day. Sergio Balati we were talking about vocabulary. I think you know Frank Briggs too. You know Frank Briggs?
Of course, yeah, sure.
And
I sold a house to Frank Briggs years ago.
That's right.
He bought my old house.
I totally forgot about that. Yeah, he was saying you had a recording studio
in the 80s,
that he wanted. Yeah.
No, it wasn't. It was just a garage room.
Frank used to live here in Syracuse, New York, where I live, and he was, just a great drummer. And but he would talk about vocabulary when you used to hang out and talk. And it's that word vocabulary keeps coming up lately when I talk with people, and I think it's like what you have to offer here right now, and then coming up. I would urge people to go there and check it out. Go to chadwackerman.com, go to the drum room, because this vocabulary, you're going to get lessons that are just fantastic in increasing your vocabulary. By the way, I have a couple of my friends who I know you know one of them. Gary Husband is watching. Hey, Gary.
Oh, Gary.
And Chris Ellis.
I love Gary, man. The stuff he's doing now is just, he's an inspiration and just blows me away, both with keyboard and drumming. Yeah,
he's another one who makes me
one of my favorites.
I emote to Gary's music too, man. And Chris Ellis,
Gary's very, very, very deep musician.
Yeah. My other friend who's in LA, but from Syracuse, Chris Ellis, is watching too. So you may know Chris, I think. But so that's great. Now, how about your music you've put out under your own name?
Mm-hmm.
Is that, and please forgive me for asking this, because I'm kind of new. I did a CD last year, but I haven't done a live gig in 7 years. I did a CD, but it's more of a fundraising project. And Jimmy and
Great.
Scott Kenzie, Jeff Richmond. So it came out, and then I learned that people stream. I just figured this out last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of buying stuff. But if people want to buy your music, where is it available to them?
If they want CDs, if they're old school, you can go to CD Baby.
Oh, cool.
You can get them all there. They're all available there, and
all right.
You know, the usual digital, Spotify or
okay. So I'm
iTunes,
gonna just
the usual places.
Okay.
Yeah. But thank you. Thanks for that.
Yeah, well, it's important to me because especially now with COVID, there are I don't know anyone's personal situation, but I do know that a lot of people have been hit by this, especially in the music world. No touring,
absolutely,
no live gigs, less income, and people are getting creative and they're doing stuff but I don't know what it's like. I don't know how their income is affected. But even before COVID, I'm an advocate for these people have spent their life to put out music that is amazing. That's subjective, I suppose, but in my opinion, I'm right. So buy the music, buy it. Go to CD Baby and buy it. Support the musicians because they're not even going to get all the money. They're not going to get all the money. It doesn't work like that. So at least they can get 40, 50, 60%, whatever it is. Something's better
it turned
than nothing.
into, in the old days, you put out a CD and support it with the tour to try to sell more CDs or album, whatever. And then that went away. So you would make a CD so you could make money on the tour.
Yeah.
And then of course there's no tour. At least for
no tour right now.
So we get all these vaccines in place. So
yeah. Just really quick, I want to go back to Ellen for 1 second and talk about Frank. So you know Leonardo Moonjune.
Of course, yeah.
Such a great guy. Such a great guy doing so much to help people.
And I can tell you that when I was with Allan, and I think Gary Husband would probably chime in and say the same. For me, as a side man, everything got better when Leonardo started managing Allan. He really looked after him.
I met him, I think it's about 8 years ago. It came up on a Facebook memory. But, I love that guy like a brother because he's really in your corner.
Yep.
He was in Allan's corner. He's in anyone he represents. Plus he has Moonjune Records, which has some beautiful stuff on it. But that's another, so I was at the Iridium and I happened to be in New York. So I was texting with Leonardo. I'm like, well, I think I'll go see Virgil's band there tonight. Says, okay, well, I'll be there. I'll meet you. So he comes in and we sit down at Leonardo's table because he kind of has a table he gravitates to. Mm-hmm. And he says, Allan Holdsworth is upstairs, but he doesn't want to come down. I was like, oh. But eventually Allan came down and he was listening. And then in between sets, I had to get going, but I explained, and I'm sorry, folks, we're going back for a minute, but this changed my life. You, Allan, Jimmy, that night, it was the best thing that ever happened to me musically. So I told Allan that story, and I love you, Allan, if you're watching, but you looked at me like I had 3 heads and you didn't understand how I could be moved like that. I don't think he understood what he did for people, but I'm so grateful for that night. Yeah.
He was very humble, but I know he did, because you tell these stories and it's very, I'm moved by hearing it, but I mean, we've had those experiences too. And Allan had experience of hearing certain musicians, Keith Jarrett or Michael Brecker, where he was completely moved. So he knows that feeling. Okay. I think it's probably be hard for him to receive it. Yeah, it's because it's a little bit uncomfortable.
Sure.
He knew he had something different, though, for sure.
Oh, it was beautiful.
Yeah, anyway.
So let me just ask you just one. I mean, I don't know how much time you have. If you have a couple minutes, can you just tell us a little bit about your experience with Frank Zappa? How did that come about? What was it like for you? What did you take away from it? Just what was that whole thing like?
Well,
and Chris Ellis, I don't know if you know, Chris Ellis was at the show that I was. Yeah, it was you and your dad and me, Chris, the three of us. Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, I joined in 1981. I had a 3-day audition. He just had a cattle call audition, which he tended to do. And I could spend an hour just talking about the audition process, but it was pretty intense. What was it like to work with? It was like nothing else. He had his own little empire, really. I mean, he had his own world, which didn't have anything to do with anybody else at the time, because he owned his records. He could put out as many records as he wanted to, because he had his own label. So he tended to put out maybe four a year. He wrote constantly. And on the first band I was in, we rehearsed for 3 months for 8 hours a day, and we memorized 80 songs. And they're not, there's that Frank Zappa songs. They're not. It's not, AABA form cycling over and over. It's got a ton of detail in it, and he would change his stuff up all the time. He'd take one of the older songs and completely rearrange it, change the style. Every tour had those kind of major changes. And when you're on the road, we'd rehearse on the road too. We wouldn't have sound checks, we'd have rehearsals. And then he had recording trucks, so everything was recorded.
Wow. Yeah,
I think after the first tour I did, he had 10 albums worth of music.
Wow.
After the first, I think it was a 3-month tour. He just had so much music in him. It was just continuous. And he would write in all sorts of different ways. Write on the guitar. He would write sometimes from just lyric sheets, and only words, and come up with this whole amazing, adventurous stuff from the lyrics. Anyway, you were asking about the Zappa gig. So it was. I mean, it was amazing. He was like no one else. I mean, he was a classical composer and great adventurous rock guitar player, wrote tons and tons of music. The band members themselves were very hard on each other. Like, everybody wanted to make it as strong as possible. We rehearsed like crazy, usually 8 hours a day for months. And then, had the whole concept of anything can happen at any time for no reason whatsoever on stage. But the music was super tight, when it was super tight, then he could change it with just visual cues and things on stage. So you had to really get your head into a space of, this is going to work. And there's a whole lot of trust here. We've rehearsed a lot, and we don't know what he's going to do, but it's going to be.
I was really wondering about that.
And we're going to make it really strong. And just just the drummers alone that he had in the band, I did come after Vinnie Colaiuta. And Vinnie was, became really obviously popular by being able to be Vinnie in Frank's band. Then before Dave Logan had done that one tour, but in between two Vinnie tours, and then before him was Terry Bozzio, and these guys, then before him, Chester Thompson and Ralph Humphrey and Ainsley Dunbar, and just all these unbelievable drummers. And Frank was a drummer himself, so he did know what was possible and what was not possible on the kit.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, he played a bit of marimba himself and drums as well. Played drums in high school.
Wow.
So yeah, it was amazing. I'm on, I think, 27 albums.
Yeah,
a lot of live stuff, and yeah, it was just amazing to watch how he would work, because it was not like anybody else.
Well, there are a couple of instrumental things that I have of him that I've listened to for decades now. There's the "Shut Up and Play Your Guitar," and then "Shut Up and Play Your Guitar 2," I think. There's like
so people who don't know, those are edited guitar solos out of songs. It's just the guitar solo parts. Yeah, that's what it is.
Okay. Interesting. Wow. So yeah, I've never spoken with anyone else who's ever actually worked with Frank. Um, was there a set list, or did he just go in whatever order
There
he
was a different
wanted?
set list every night.
Okay.
Yeah, it was different every night. So like
Mhm.
people would follow the band, like the Grateful Dead, you know, kind of scene where because it would be a different show every night.
Wow.
Sometimes we'd learn typically segue tunes in groups of 3 or 4 songs,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
because like by the time 88 we had 125 songs memorized, he would just change up the modules
I see.
of songs. So
Oh
yeah,
wow.
literally every night would be different, and then keep on writing. So there's always new stuff all the time.
It's, you know, he really had a short life, sadly, and look at what he put out there. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I think there was 65 albums when he passed, and then there was so many more in the can. But you know, after that, they keep on putting them out.
Yeah.
And he documented
Interesting.
everything too. There was always filming going on, and yeah, yeah,
Yeah. That's fantastic.
it's hard to imagine all that kind of output and how hard he worked.
Did you you toured all over with him, right? You were a few years with him, right? 6, 7, 8 years?
7,
7?
yeah, 7 years.
So you went to a lot of places. I know you've traveled anyways though with other tours, other groups, but
Yeah, we did the States and Europe many times.
mhm.
Yeah.
Wow. Um all right, so I do have one other question I wanted to ask. I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this. I actually forgot, and I meant to tell you this.
Fine.
Or maybe because I still have a bit of COVID brain left over, I might have told you and forgot I told you. So for people who are out there watching, listening, drummer, musician, do you have any advice? This is a big question, but it seems like especially educators like yourself, you usually have advice. And so if you were to give one piece of advice to people who are out there and they're working musicians, well, at least they were before COVID, maybe they're just recording now, whatever it is, what is your advice as far as furthering the career, being a better player, being a musician, anything involved with the process of this, making music, learning, studying, whatever it is? What do you tell your students? I didn't really ask that in the most optimal way,
No, that's
but
a big global question.
it's a really big one. I know it is. And it wasn't fair that I just sprung it on you now.
No, that's
So
fine.
I do apologize.
I want to say something good. I think if you can, well, students is one thing, but you're talking about, but we're all kind of students anyway. So
Yeah.
I think just if you can, like even in your practice, you want to gear everything to music rather than gearing things to kind of exercises, you know, or showing off. If you can think, it's a big question. So I want to like, it needs to be like a global answer. If you can,
You can give a multi-part one.
yeah, okay. Well,
one
one
piece
of
of
the things
advice.
is I think advice is to think of the bigger picture in music and not play for yourself, but play for the song or the tune or whatever it is to make it.
Yeah, that's huge.
It's important, and a lot of people don't do that these days. I think maybe it's social media, and well, especially at the moment, we're all working alone. But a lot of the players, a lot of musicians that I like play in a way which is group oriented. It's not as like I've played with some really, you know, players who are amazing, but for instance, you play with them and whatever you do doesn't affect them. And I've heard them with other drummers and they play the same. They play really great, but there's no interaction, there's no connection. And they can be really popular, and that's all, it's all fine, it's all subjective. But the stuff I think that I like, and I think one of the reasons I've been able to have a career is I've always tried to make the band sound good, play in a way where the band
You
can
know,
lift
I'm
up
interrupting
as,
for one
yeah.
second. I'm very sorry because I meant to say this earlier. You have a way of, in any situation that I know of, that I've heard you or seen you, you're one of those special musicians who you can bring out the best in the other players. You just do it. And it's
Well,
such,
something
I
I've
think,
noticed in Jimmy Johnson's playing. I've played a lot with Jimmy Johnson. Gary Husband has too, obviously. But the thing I notice about when I play with Jimmy Johnson, he makes everybody sound better by what he does, and that's not easy. It's not easy to do, but I've heard him play with every kind of drummer. And for me, when Jimmy's playing bass and the drummer is playing, the drummer sounds better when he's playing bass. And so I've always kind of wanted to do that, like play in a way where it just lifts the whole group and make the music as strong as it can be, whatever that is, whatever kind of music.
you do that. You do that.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but it's a nice approach, I think.
Yeah,
because I think with social media, because everybody's putting, look at me, here's what I can do out there, and there's some tons of amazing guys out there. But then I've heard some of those guys in a band, and it's like, oh, they need to think of a sum of everybody a little bit. But that's me.
See, I'm a late bloomer. I learned to play for the song not too late, but not early enough. And those words came from a couple of really good teachers, and I just had to get my act together. And then when I did, I mean, you know, it's like Sergio was saying recently, you get the first call. If you do the right thing, play the right stuff for the song and for the event or the situation, that could lead to the second call. You want the second call. If you don't do it right the first time, you won't get a second call. That's no bueno. It's no good.
It's like the old joke. Oh yeah, he's worked with everybody once. You know? Or
That's funny. That's really funny. Wow. See, you know, I didn't ask you this either. This probably won't be too hard to answer because I forgot to write it in my notes. Any particulars like situations musically that just stand out to you? And I don't mean like a general situation like 7 years with Frank Zappa or long-term relationship with Allan, even though they were highly special in and of themselves. But with any particular moments where they just stand out as like, you know, that was like the best gig ever or the best feeling ever I had playing drums or being in a band. Any recollections of anything?
There were I can't remember what cities. There were a few times with Allan where just and it probably again Gary I would think feels the same, where just you would try new stuff and it just all worked. It was spontaneous. It wasn't pre-planned. It kind of just worked with what Allan. It just the whole and it almost becomes like it's so effortless. It's almost like you're watching it happen, like you're kind of removed from it, like you're watching this thing, and it's just like it's just going. This is just.
Yeah.
You know, there's no fighting anything. There's no fighting time. It's just the whole thing is like it's one thing. Yeah, but it's improvising. It's in an improvisational situation. I had some pretty magical moments with in Dudu and Daye Rose, the famous Senegalese drummer. I got to play with him. It was a funny band. It was a drum band with Luis Conte and Bill Bruford and myself.
Oh, really? Wow.
There was these long improvisation points, and there was some nights with him that was pretty amazing. And it would go places that we didn't know, but it just worked for some reason. It sounded like it was. Also, there was some nights with Terry Bozzio playing a duet. We did a 20-city tour, the first tour we did years ago. But again, there was some, we'd always, we kind of changed the show where we ended up just improvising together. And there were certain nights where just, again, it was the same feeling. It's almost like you're watching it happen, because it's just working. It's sounding like
Yeah.
compositions, but it's improvised. It's just where it ends up going. So I've been lucky, been really lucky to have some of those things happen that way.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've had a couple experiences like that when it just works and I love it. I haven't, like I said, I haven't played in a few years. I just needed to change careers years ago and take a vacation. And now,
Yeah,
talking with
that's all good
you
too.
and, talking with you and some other people, I think maybe I should practice. And whatever I do, I don't know what it's going to be. And this isn't about me, but you will influence it. I know, just I'm different now. So coming back, whatever I do will be different. And I appreciate what you do. I appreciate it. It's really helped me a lot in so many ways.
Oh, thank you so much.
How about recordings? Any projects coming up? Anything in the works? Any ideas?
There'll be something with, yesterday, Mike Miller sent me some tracks to play on. So that'll be fun. He's a great,
cool.
amazing guitar
Yeah.
player.
I love him.
He plays in my trio and I play in his quintet.
Cool. That's great.
Yeah.
I saw, oh man, so crank, the word crank is in it. The crank
tones. That's a group of very, very old friends. We've known each other for probably 40 years. Jim Cox on B3 organ, and Carl Verheyen, Craig Copeland, an old friend Tom Child on bass. And it used to be we'd just get together once a year and do kind of original and funny kind of blues songs. And we've always done a fundraiser, a cancer fundraiser for California, Kern County Cancer Institute.
Yes.
And this year we did virtually, we did outside patio gear with Albert Lee as a special guest. Great country guitar player. Yeah.
I saw some video of that. In fact, I think I saw a video of like an interview.
John Ferraro's also in that band. So it's two drummers.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's good fun.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to join me, Chad. It's
thank you, Carl.
Really great to meet you like this. Get to know you and learn and hear about your experiences, approach. I personally always like hearing stories. I know Jimmy Haslip has told me a lot of stories, and Peter Erskine and all of them, some really funny stories. And it's always, it's a part of history, this musical history. Zappa was such an icon, and the legacy is huge, and you're a part of that, and your own legacy. And I
was honored to be just be there,
I can't even imagine.
And there were certain, with him too, there were certain gigs, like when we recorded with the London Symphony Orchestra for 3 days.
I remember, I remember that recording too.
It was all classical music, and it wasn't the rock band, but he wrote drum set into the orchestra as a multiple percussion instrument.
Yeah.
Which was the hardest stuff that he wrote. But I was able to do that, and he brought Ed Mann, he brought a clarinetist, David Ocker. There's a piece called Mo and Herb's Vacation, which is a clarinet concerto, and the first movement has the drums in unison with the clarinet. So
wow.
It's crazy. I mean, it's not crazy. It's a beautiful piece of music. It's actually gorgeous, but full of the most, intense kind of polyrhythms you'd ever see. But when you listen to it, it all makes sense. It doesn't sound like math.
Right.
I guess that was one thing I didn't talk about Frank. He did, even though he wrote a bunch of complicated music, that's the way he heard it. It never came from a math perspective. Like I'm being clever by writing these complicated. He actually heard music that way, and then he wrote it down. I was like, well, here it is. This is what I was hearing in my head.
Going back to what you say about what he said, people don't talk in 4/4. I just have to digest and think about that for a while, because that's.
He said it was unnatural to play in 4/4.
It is. I don't even know why. If I look at it, I'm not even sure why. I think we tend to feel that for some reason. But what was it like? I'm just curious, when you got the gig, when you were notified, however that came about, that you got the Zappa gig. How were you notified, and what did that feel like? Because you had a 3-day
after the three-day audition. on that night, he said that, and he heard a lot of drummers. He had 40 drummers or something over 3 weeks. And I heard about it late, so I was there the last 3 days. I went home and he gave me a call and said, he told me all the parameters. He said, this is what's going to happen. We're going to rehearse for 3 months, go out on tour for at least 3 months, might be more. To States, we might take a little break, maybe a week or two, then probably go to Europe for another 3 months. He wasn't quite sure at that point, but
excuse me.
And he said, here's the rehearsal pay, and here's the pay of the weekly salary of the gig. He said, are you interested? He said, he also said I had a meeting with the band, and we talked over and he said, so we decided to offer you the gig. Are you interested? I'm going, yeah, I am. I was 21 years old. I'm interested.
Wow, man.
Completely. And
yeah,
at the
right.
End of the,
yeah.
At the end of the call, he said, well, the reason you got the gig is because I like your feel. That was the last thing I expected him to say, because we'd gone through all this, playing him 13 and 21 and 19, and then playing it all reggae. And
yeah,
he would just do all these things to see what you could do and what you couldn't do, and find your limits. Then ask you to do more, but I kind of got it after a while, because anybody could really, if they worked hard, practice all that stuff, and it probably wouldn't be the right feel that he wanted, because it came down to, he improvised for a long time, and he wanted that interaction with the drums. And then if you're playing a soul tune, it needs to have a certain feel. If you're playing this metal tunes, that needs to have a certain amount of feel and energy to it. So you couldn't really take a classical percussionist and have them do it, even though they could play probably precisely the hard rhythms. So
yeah, right.
More than that. But it came down to, and he loved doo-wop music. He loved music a lot of music from the 50s and stuff. So that stuff that had really cool feels in it, New Orleans music. So.
Oh, that's cool. So was part of your audition, I'm just curious, like the Black Page, that famous piece?
We didn't do the Black Page. He had a harder piece on there, which I couldn't really play at Mo and Herb's Vacation. But he had other tunes, Alien Orifice, like just the hard section of the tunes, the classical parts. So
wow.
So we
I'll just ask one more
too.
question. Yeah. So what did it feel like going through that audition? I didn't know I'd be asking these questions.
I think the only reason I wasn't expecting to get it. I didn't. I just thought, actually, my friend Jim Cox talked me into going. I wasn't even going to go. I thought there's no point. And he said, no, you'll get a funny story out of it. Just go up to the house and you get to meet him. You get to meet some other people. And I did. I met Tommy Mars and Steve Vai and Ed Mann.
Right.
They were kind of the nucleus of that band.
Yeah. Right. Wow. Yeah. That's amazing, man. What a great story.
To be there.
What a great experience, all the things you can learn from that.
Tie-in was that Frank's favorite guitar player was Allan Holdsworth.
I've heard of that.
And I actually brought Allan to Frank's house at one point.
Oh, cool.
I got to introduce them.
Wow. Please forgive me, Chad, but for real, I am having some memory issues. It's related to COVID. I'm not usually like this. How did you meet Allan Holdsworth, and how did that come about?
Oh, it's through my friend John Ferraro.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
John had auditioned, but he knew he wasn't going to. So John just gave me a call and gave me Allan's number and said, call him up. You can.
Okay.
You could go there and have
That's
fun,
right. You mentioned that
improvising.
earlier. I apologize.
No worries at all. No.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. John was on here. I see. He was on here.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Hey, John. Oh, he's still here. Hi, John.
Hey, John. That's
great, man. Well,
I played a lot of double drums with John and stuff.
Oh, really? Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
You're dead. Your dad, your brother. You have a brother and your daughters, a musical family, generation.
Yeah, I have 3 brothers, and my son plays a bit of drums too, and my daughter sings and plays keyboards and guitar.
Man, that's great. Well, this has been a real pleasure, man. A real honor.
Thank you, Carl.
Again, I started to say goodbye a while ago, and then, we got another few things we had to talk about.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. No
thank you.
worries.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time today. It's really a pleasure. You've made such a difference in so many people's lives. You know,
Oh,
I
thank
look
you.
at the comments here and on Facebook. We have a lot of. I haven't even read them all, or else I get distracted. But
Well,
you know,
thank you everybody for tuning in too. Appreciate it.
yeah, thank you for tuning in, everyone. Thanks for your time, Chad, and your great music for all these decades. And I look forward to whatever you do in the future. I know I'll be checking out the drum room because
Great.
I need ideas and I need to practice.
Okay, me too. I'll be there.
Necesito practicar mi drums. Yeah. Well, listen, I'll be in touch with you via email here with
Perfect.
upload things and all that. We can talk about that and posting, but thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Carl. Appreciate it. Really do. Okay.
All right, my friend.
Have a
It's
good day.
great to talk with you. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Okay.
Take care now. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.